Before I get started, it's important to remind everyone, during my induction into the Lucchese family in April of 2013, the acting boss at the time, Matty Madonna, who presided over the ceremony, told me that the wife or girl of another member was off limits. To further explain, these rules were not nonchalantly mentioned. Conversely, they were rules that were put in place many, many years ago, and we were made to understand that if broken, these rules were punishable by death. Many of us remember, before dating a person, a flirting period existed. One person is flirting with another, and in some cases, both people flirt with each other. Back in 2014, one night I was standing outside the cigar lounge with Big John, who at the time was my captain. A woman and two of her friends were walking into the restaurant next door named Cabo. At that time, several people had come to me and told me that this woman had been asking around about me. I excused myself from Big John and went to speak to her for a few minutes. And at some point that night, I did go into Cabo and have another conversation with her. And when they were leaving, I walked her and her friends out to her car and spoke to her for a few more minutes. This all took place in the view of Big John, who was sitting in a cigar lounge facing the parking lot. When I walked back over to him, he would display the first of many levels of dishonor, especially as a friend in that life. He made a reference about her breast and stated how he always wanted to fuck her. Internally, I shook my head. Granted, at the time he made the statement, I understand that she wasn't my girl. Nevertheless, as a friend in that life, you don't make statements like that. In Cosa Nostra, that's not only a violation, but a sign of disrespect. You also don't make statements like that because the woman that you're talking about could very well become the guy's girl or even his wife one day. Well, let's fast forward to a time when I was now in a relationship with this woman. Put yourself in my shoes. You're a member of a family and you start dating someone who your captain made a comment about his fantasy about screwing her. The level of disgust that I felt at that time is unexplainable. Anyway, one afternoon, this woman went to go get Starbucks, which happens to be in the same strip mall as the cigar lounge. She lived in the area, so it was a 2-minute trip for her to Starbucks. It was wintertime, and after getting out of her car, she accidentally brushed up against another car that was filthy with salt, which got on the leg of her pants. At that moment, Big John walked over to her, and according to her, he said, "Let me clean you, you got your pants dirty," and proceeded to wipe her leg clean. I couldn't believe what she was telling me. I said, "He did what?" She pleaded with me not to say anything and said I would embarrass her if I did. Regardless, in that life, her embarrassment comes secondary to leaving the disrespect unaddressed. I did bring it up to Big John, who attempted to brush it off by telling me, "Mo, I didn't want her walking around like that." I told him eventually she would have noticed it and took it off herself, and he didn't say nothing. In that same strip mall is a phone store, and she was always in there with one issue or another with her phone. One afternoon while she was in the phone store, she became overwhelmed after learning that she owed $700. And I don't remember what the money was about, but I know it was $700. She called me up to tell me what was going on in the phone store, and she was crying. And then she told me when she was walking out of the store, she seen my friend with the hat, and she was talking about Big John. She said she was embarrassed because he seen her crying, and he asked her what was wrong. So she explained to him why she was upset. Then she tells me, Big John kept insisting to give her the money for the phone. As soon as I heard it, I got pissed. I said, "Please tell me that you didn't take the money." But she said she didn't. I happened to be driving to Staten Island to go see her, and I also had to meet everyone at the cigar lounge that night. I think it was Wednesday night. It was one of the nights we usually all met there. When I seen her, I made her repeat what took place. After listening to it again, I was pissed. I wanted to see if Big John was going to mention that he offered to give her the money. When I got to the cigar lounge that night, Big John was standing there talking with Johnny Sideburns and Joe Perna. I said my hellos and listened for a while, and then I waited, but he never mentioned it. And then I waited some more, and he still didn't mention it. And the more time went by, the angrier I became. At some point, I turned to him and said, "Oh, by the way, so-and-so told me you offered to pay her phone bill today." In the next instant, in my head, I thought I was smacking him on the shoulder in a friendly way, like a tap. But what actually happened was, I said thank you and hit his shoulder too hard and knocked him back into the walk-in humidor. His face turned red, but he laughed it off. "Mo, what's the matter with you? You almost knocked me into the wall." We were all standing there laughing, but my laughter came from a different place. It came from watching the nervousness of Sideburns and Perna's faces after I hit them. They both had the look of utter shock and disbelief. Later that night, Perna and I went to grab something to eat. He said, "Pal, don't you think you hit him a little too hard?" I said, "Maybe just a little too hard." He said, "You think?" We laughed about it, but I explained the reason I did that. I wanted John to know that she told me about it. and I didn't want him to think that he had a little secret going with her. Perner agreed that this was not a good situation. A week later, Perner would also experience his own situation with Big John's disrespect. We were meeting with the girls for dinner at Cafe Luna, which is across the street from the cigar lounge. And before coming to the restaurant, Perner stopped to see Big John, and he had his wife in the car with him. He got out and went to the cigar lounge to go talk with him. And when he was ready to leave, Big John told him, "You're not going to introduce me to your wife?" So they went outside and walked over to the car, and he introduced them. Then Big John pulled Perner to the side, and according to Perner, he told him, "Your wife's hot, Mo." As soon as Perner walked into Cafe Luna, he pulled me to the side, and he told me what happened, which obviously didn't surprise me. He was going on and on and on about it, and I told him, "Welcome to my world." At one point, Perna mentioned making a beef out of it and bringing it to Joe DiNapoli, who was our consigliere at the time. But he thought twice about it because Big John was close to Joe, and he never mentioned it. He had told me, "You can't fight City Hall. In a situation like that involving your captain, you bring it to the consigliere." But in this case, you were losing that decision before you even started it, which is why I never brought it there. Looking back on it now, Big John should have never been in that position, or in the life for that matter. He's the perfect example of what the mob has become. He would have never gotten away with that years ago. Obviously, I'm now in a different place in my life. I've put all that behind me. However, I do know how we should have handled Big John. Hypothetically, if he was found with a pair of panties stuffed in his mouth, that would have sent a clear message to his fellow rule breakers. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please remember to hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, you could do that as well. And I thank everyone who has subscribed. And if you think friends and family might enjoy this video, please share it and thank you. As most of you know, I was on an episode of the History Channel last night. The series is called History's Greatest Heist, and the episode I was in happened to be the Lufthansa heist. I had a good time filming with that crew, and I think it came out well. So check it out if you haven't seen it. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll catch you on the next one.